welcome back, dear friend. Or if this is your first time here, welcome. Pull up a chair. Get comfortable. We have time, all the time in the world. Tonight, I want to talk to you about patience. Not the gritting your teeth kind of patience. Not the frustrated waiting, but the deep, wise, peaceful patience that comes from understanding that everything has its season. Everything has its time. The ancient Stoics taught that we suffer most when we fight against the natural rhythm of things, when we try to force fruit to ripen before its time, when we demand that seeds sprout the moment we plant them, when we rage against the slowness of growth. But there were those, even in ancient times, who learned to work with time instead of against it, who learned to wait, not passively, but actively, preparing, tending, trusting. Tonight, I'll tell you about a farmer who waited 10 years for his vineyard to bear fruit, and an architect whose temple took a lifetime to build, and a fisherman who learned that the perfect catch comes only to those who know when to cast the net and when to simply wait. 3 stories about patience. 3 stories about timing. 3 stories about the wisdom of working with the world instead of against it. So breathe slowly now. Let your shoulders drop. Let the urgency of the day dissolve. And listen, there was once a farmer named Lucius who lived in the hills outside Rome, in the time when Marcus Aurelius was emperor. Lucius was not a wealthy man, but he owned a piece of land, rocky and difficult, that his father had left him. His neighbors grew wheat and barley, crops that came quickly, that could be harvested within a season. They made enough to live on year after year, with predictable returns and predictable effort. But Lucius had a different vision. He wanted to plant a vineyard. Now, everyone told him this was foolish. The land was too rocky, they said. Grapes were too difficult. And even if the vines took root, it would be years, many years, before they produced anything worth harvesting. Why wait 10 years for grapes, they asked, when you could harvest wheat in 4 months? But Lucius had learned something from his father, something about patience, something about the long view. His father used to say that the best things in life cannot be rushed. That quality takes time, that anything worth having is worth waiting for. So Lucius began to plant his vineyard. He cleared the rocks one by one from the hillside. He dug deep holes for each vine, deeper than seemed necessary, so the roots could reach down into the good soil beneath the rocky surface. He chose his vines carefully, selecting the varieties that would produce the finest wine, not the fastest harvest. He planted them in rows that followed the contour of the hill, so the water would flow properly so each vine would get the sun it needed. And then he waited, and while he waited, he worked. The first year, nothing happened. The vines were small, fragile things, barely surviving. His neighbors laughed. "Look at Lucius," they said, "wasting his time on sticks in the ground while we harvest our wheat." But Lucius tended his vines. He watered them during the dry season. He protected them from the frost. He pruned them carefully, removing the weak growth, encouraging the strong. The second year, the vines grew a little. They sent out leaves, green and hopeful. But there were no grapes. His neighbors shook their heads. 2 years, they said, and nothing to show for it. What a waste! But Lucius was not discouraged. He knew that grapevines must establish their roots first. Deep roots, strong roots, before they can bear fruit. He knew that what was happening beneath the ground was more important than what showed above it. So he continued to tend his vineyard. He learned the personality of each vine, which ones needed more water, which ones grew more vigorously, which ones needed extra care. The third year, a few small clusters of grapes appeared. Lucius was tempted to let them ripen, to finally have something to show for his work. But he knew better. He cut them off, every single cluster, and let them fall to the ground. His neighbors thought he had gone mad. "Finally grapes," they said, and he cuts them off. What kind of farmer destroys his own harvest? But Lucius understood something they did not. He understood that young vines must put all their energy into growing strong, not into producing fruit, that if he let them bear too early, they would be weakened, and the vineyard would never reach its full potential. Patience, he reminded himself. Everything in its time. The fourth year, more grapes appeared, larger clusters, more of them. Again, Lucius cut most of them away, leaving only a few to test the quality. He tasted them and found them sour, underdeveloped. Not yet, he thought, not yet. The 5th year, the 6th year, the 7th year passed. Each year, the vines grew stronger, their trunks thickening, their roots reaching deeper into the hillside. Each year, Lucius tended them, pruned them, protected them, waited. His neighbors stopped laughing. Now they just felt sorry for him. 7 years, they said, and still no harvest worth selling. 7 years of work with nothing to show for it. Poor Lucius, they said. He should have planted wheat. But Lucius had something his neighbors did not have. He had faith in the process. He had read the ancient texts, the writings of Cato the Elder on agriculture, who said that a vineyard is not a crop, but a legacy, that it takes a decade to establish, but once established, it produces for generations. In the 8th year, something changed. The vines now thick and gnarled, their roots deep in the hillside, produced abundant clusters of grapes. Lucius tasted them and smiled. They were good. Not perfect yet, but good. In the 9th year, they were better. The grapes were larger, sweeter, more complex in flavor. Lucius made a small batch of wine and stored it in clay amphorae to age. And in the 10th year, the vineyard reached its maturity. The clusters hung heavy on the vines, deep purple, perfectly ripe. Lucius harvested them carefully with reverence, knowing that this moment was the fruit of 10 years of patience, 10 years of faith, 10 years of work. He pressed the grapes and made his wine, and when it was ready, he took an amphora to the market in Rome. The wine merchants tasted it and fell silent. Then they looked at each other with wide eyes. "Where did this come from?" they asked. "This is extraordinary. This is among the finest wines we have ever tasted." Word spread quickly. Lucius's wine became famous throughout Rome. Wealthy families requested it for their banquets. The emperor's household bought entire harvests in advance. And the price? 10 times, 20 times what his neighbors received for their wheat. But more than the money, more than the fame, Lucius felt a deep satisfaction. He had trusted the process. He had worked with time instead of against it. He had been patient, not passive, but actively patient, tending and preparing and waiting for the right moment. His neighbors came to him now asking for advice. "How did you do it?" they asked. "How did you create something so valuable?" And Lucius would smile and say, "I planted good vines. I tended them well, and I waited. I gave them the time they needed to become what they were meant to be." Some of his neighbors decided to plant vineyards too. But many gave up after 2 or 3 years when they saw no immediate results. They could not sustain the patience. They could not trust the invisible work happening beneath the ground. But a few understood. They planted their vines and tended them and waited. And 10 years later, the hillside was covered with vineyards, all producing exceptional wine, all because one man had the patience to wait, the wisdom to trust the process. Lucius lived to be an old man. His vineyard produced for 40 more years, and his children and grandchildren tended it after him. And every harvest, they would remember the lesson he taught them, that the best things cannot be rushed, that quality takes time, that patience is not passive waiting, but active preparation, that if you tend something well and give it the time it needs, it will become more than you ever imagined. Now let me tell you about Callicrates, an architect in ancient Athens. In the generation after the great Parthenon was built, Callicrates was commissioned to design a temple to Athena in a small city outside Athens. It was not a grand commission. The city was not wealthy. The budget was modest. Most architects would have built something simple, something quick, something functional, but unremarkable. But Callicrates saw this differently. He saw an opportunity to create something perfect. Not large, but perfect. Not expensive, but beautiful. Not quick, but enduring. He told the city council that the temple would take time. How much time? They asked. He thought carefully and said, perhaps 20 years. Perhaps more. 20 years. The council members were shocked. We need a temple now, they said. Our old temple is crumbling. 20 years is a lifetime. Callicrates nodded. Yes, he said. It is a lifetime. My lifetime. And that is exactly how long it will take to do it properly. Some council members wanted to hire a different architect. Someone who would work faster. But there was an old council member, a man named Solon, who had studied philosophy. He spoke up. Let him take his time, Solon said. What is 20 years compared to the centuries this temple should stand? Would you rather have a rushed temple that crumbles in 50 years? Or a perfect temple that stands for 1,000? The council debated. Finally, they agreed. Build your temple, they told Callicrates. Take the time you need, but it must be perfect. And so Callicrates began. But he did not begin with stone. He began with study. He traveled to every great temple in Greece. He measured them, sketched them, studied how they were built. He examined which ones had stood the test of time and which ones had developed cracks and weaknesses. He studied the quarries, learning which marble was strongest, which would weather best, which would hold the finest detail in carving. He studied the mathematics of proportion, the golden ratio, the relationships between height and width that create beauty in the human eye. This study alone took 3 years. The city council grew impatient. 3 years, they said, and not a single stone laid. But Callicrates was unmoved. Would you have a surgeon operate without studying anatomy? He asked. Would you have a ship captain sail without learning navigation? I am learning how to build something that will outlast us all. This learning cannot be rushed. In the 4th year, he finally began to design. He drew and redrew the plans, adjusting proportions, refining details. He made clay models at different scales, studying how the light would fall on the columns at different times of day. He consulted with sculptors about the pediment carvings. He consulted with priests about the proper orientation for the altar. He consulted with engineers about the foundation needed for the rocky hillside where the temple would stand. The design took 2 more years, 5 years, and still no construction. Some in the city mocked him. Callicrates, the eternal planner, they called him. Callicrates, who will die before he lays a single stone. But Solon defended him. Patience, he told the council. Great things are never rushed. In the 6th year, construction finally began. But even now, Callicrates worked slowly, deliberately, carefully. He personally inspected every block of marble that arrived from the quarry. If he found the slightest flaw, the slightest crack or impurity, he rejected it. Only perfect stone would be used. His workers complained. We could work faster, they said, if you were not so particular. These tiny flaws will never be noticed. But Callicrates would shake his head. I will notice, he said. And more importantly, time will notice. A small flaw becomes a large crack. A minor impurity becomes a point of weakness. We are not building for today. We are building for centuries. The foundation took 3 years to complete. 3 years for a foundation, but Callicrates insisted that it be perfect. The stones were fitted so precisely that no mortar was needed. Each stone locked into the others, creating a foundation that would never shift, never settle, never crack. Then came the columns. Callicrates had them carved with extraordinary precision. Each column was not perfectly straight, but had a slight curve, a subtle swelling in the middle called entasis, which made them appear straight to the human eye and gave them visual strength. Each flute carved into the columns was measured to exact depth. Each capital was carved with identical acanthus leaves. The work was painstakingly slow. Years passed. 10 years. 15 years. Callicrates was now an old man, his beard white, his hands gnarled. But still he worked, still he supervised every detail. Some of the original council members had died. Younger men took their places, men who had not been there when the project began. Why is this taking so long? They asked. Can we not speed it up? But Solon, now very old himself, still defended the architect. Look at what he is creating, Solon said. Have you ever seen such perfection? Such beauty? This is not merely a temple. This is a lesson in patience, in dedication, in refusing to compromise excellence for speed. In the 18th year, the roof was completed. In the 19th year, the sculptures were installed. In the 20th year, the final details were finished. The dedication inscriptions carved, the altar consecrated. And on a spring morning, In the 21st year of construction, the temple was complete. The entire city gathered for the dedication. And when they saw it, truly saw it for the first time as a completed whole, they wept. It was not the largest temple in Greece. It was not the most expensive, but it was, without question, the most beautiful. Every proportion was perfect. Every detail was exquisite. Every stone fit so precisely that you could not slip a knife blade between them. The morning light struck the columns and made them glow like honey. The evening light painted the pediment sculptures with gold. In every season, at every hour, the temple revealed new beauties, new subtleties of design. Callicrates stood before it, leaning on a staff. An old man now at the end of his life's work. Someone asked him, was it worth it? 21 years of your life for one building? He smiled. 21 years is nothing, he said. This temple will stand for 1,000 years, perhaps more, long after I'm dust, long after everyone here today is forgotten. This temple will still be teaching the lesson of patience, of excellence, of refusing to rush what matters. And he was right. That temple stood for over 800 years. It survived earthquakes that toppled other buildings. It survived wars and invasions. It stood because every stone was chosen perfectly. Every joint was fitted precisely. Every detail was completed with care. Other temples built quickly crumbled within generations. But Callicrates' temple endured, a testament to the power of patience, to the wisdom of taking time, to the understanding that the best things cannot be rushed. Callicrates died 2 years after the temple was completed, but his legacy lived on in stone, in beauty, in the lesson he taught. That if you are going to do something, do it right. Take the time it needs. Do not compromise. Do not rush. Create something that will outlast you. And centuries later, people would still visit that temple and marvel. They would run their hands over the perfectly fitted stones and wonder, how did they do this? How did they achieve such perfection? And the answer was always the same: patience, time, care, the refusal to settle for good enough when excellence was possible. And now, the third story, about an old fisherman named Theo, who lived on a small Greek island, and his young apprentice named Nikos. Nikos was eager, ambitious, full of energy. He wanted to be the best fisherman on the island, to catch the most fish, to earn the most money. He was always in a hurry, always rushing. Every morning before dawn, Nikos would leap into the boat, ready to cast the nets immediately. "Come on, old man," he would say to Theo, "the fish are waiting." "We are wasting time." But Theo would sit calmly in the boat, watching the water, watching the sky, watching the birds. Not yet, he would say. Not yet. This drove Nikos crazy. The other fishermen are already casting their nets, he would say. We are falling behind. We will catch nothing while you sit here doing nothing. But Theo would just smile. I am not doing nothing, he would say. I am reading the water. I am listening to what the sea is telling me. Patience, boy, patience. Finally, sometimes an hour after the other boats had cast their nets, Theo would nod. Now, he would say, now is the time. And they would cast their nets. And always, always their catch was better than the others. Larger fish, more fish. The best fish. At first, Nikos thought it was luck. But it happened too consistently to be luck. Day after day, week after week, Theo's timing was perfect. How do you know? Nikos finally asked. How do you know when to cast the net? Theo looked at the young man. Sit, he said. Watch, learn. And so, Nikos began to pay attention. He watched what Theo watched. The color of the water, the direction of the current, the behavior of the seabirds, the feel of the wind, the position of the sun. Theo explained, the fish move in patterns, he said. They follow the food. The food follows the current. The current changes with the tide, with the wind, with the temperature of the water. The seabirds, Theo continued, they can see what we cannot. When they circle and dive in a certain way, they are telling us where the fish are gathering. When they fly in a straight line toward the horizon, they are telling us the fish have moved deeper beyond our reach. The color of the water tells us about the plankton. The plankton attracts the small fish. The small fish attract the large fish. Everything's connected. Everything is a sign if you know how to read it. But most importantly, Theo said, you must learn to wait. Not every moment is the right moment. The sea has its rhythms, its cycles. There is a time when the fish are feeding, when they are active, when they will swim into our nets. And there is a time when they are resting, when they are deep, when no amount of effort will catch them. The impatient fisherman casts his net constantly and catches little. The patient fisherman waits for the right moment and catches much. It is not about working harder. It is about working smarter. It is about timing. Nikos listened. He began to understand. But understanding and practicing are different things. One morning, Nikos woke early. Before Theo, he thought, I will show the old man that I have learned. I will go out alone and catch a great haul. He took the boat out in the darkness before dawn. He saw the other fishermen casting their nets. He cast his net too, eager to prove himself. He worked hard all morning, casting and hauling, casting and hauling. But his nets came up nearly empty. A few small fish, nothing more. Exhausted and discouraged, he returned to shore. Theo was waiting, sitting on the dock, mending a net. "Where were you?" Theo asked, though he already knew. "I went out early," Nico said, ashamed. "I wanted to catch fish on my own. But I caught almost nothing." Theo nodded. "And what did you learn?" Nikos sat down heavily. "I learned that I do not yet know what I thought I knew. I watched the water. I watched the birds. But I did not truly see. I was too eager, too impatient. I cast the net because I wanted to catch fish, not because it was the right time to cast the net." Theo smiled. "Good," he said. "Now you are beginning to learn. Patience is not just waiting. It is understanding. It is reading the signs. It is trusting what you know even when others are rushing ahead." "Come," Theo said. "The time is right now." They went out together. Theo showed Nikos what he had missed. "See how the water has changed color here? See how the birds are circling, not diving? See how the wind has shifted? The fish are here now," Theo said. "They were not here at dawn. They moved with the tide. If you had waited, if you had watched, you would have known. They cast the net, and when they hauled it in, it was so full they could barely lift it. The biggest catch Nikos had ever seen. That day, Nikos understood something profound. That patience is not passive. That waiting is not laziness. That timing is everything. He understood that the sea rewards those who work with it, not against it. That nature has its own schedule, and the wise person learns to align with it rather than fight it. Over the years, Nikos became a master fisherman himself. He learned to read the water as Theo did. He learned to wait for the right moment. He learned that patience and observation are more valuable than effort and haste. And when he became old and took on his own apprentice, a young, eager boy who wanted to cast the nets immediately every morning, Nikos would smile and say, "Not yet. Not yet. Watch, learn, wait." Because he had learned what Theo taught him, that the greatest catches come not to those who work the hardest, but to those who work the wisest, not to those who act the fastest, but to those who act at the right time. That patience is not about doing nothing. It is about preparing, observing, understanding, and then acting decisively when the moment is right. The impatient fisherman exhausts himself and catches little. The patient fisherman conserves his energy and catches much, not because he is lucky, but because he understands timing, because he has learned to work with the rhythms of nature instead of against them. And this lesson, Theo told him once, applies to more than fishing. It applies to everything in life. There is a time to act and a time to wait, a time to speak and a time to listen, a time to push forward and a time to hold back. The wisdom is in knowing which is which, and that wisdom comes only through patience, through observation, through experience, through learning to read the signs that life gives us. Nikos carried this lesson with him always. And whenever he felt impatient, whenever he felt the urge to rush, to force, to act before the time was right, he would remember Theo sitting calmly in the boat, watching the water and saying, "Not yet, not yet." And he would wait and watch, and when the moment came, he would act, and it would be right. And so our three friends learned what the oak tree knows, what the river knows, what the seasons know, that there is a time for action and a time for waiting. And the wisdom is in knowing which is which. The farmer's vineyard finally bore fruit, sweeter than any rushed harvest could have produced. The architect's temple stood for centuries because he built it slowly, correctly, with patience. The fisherman caught more than fish. He caught understanding. In our world of instant everything, we have forgotten this ancient wisdom. We want results now, success now, transformation now, but the deepest things, the most valuable things, they take time. They cannot be rushed. A seed does not become a tree overnight. A child does not become wise in a day. A skill is not mastered in a week. The best wine takes years to age. The strongest relationships take time to build. The most meaningful work takes patience to complete. And yet, we live in a world that tells us everything should be fast. Instant results, quick fixes, overnight success. And when things take time, when growth is slow, when progress is invisible, we become frustrated. We think something is wrong, but nothing is wrong. This is how real growth works, slowly, steadily, beneath the surface. Building foundations, developing roots, gaining strength. The farmer could have given up after 3 years. The architect could have rushed the construction. The fisherman could have cast his net impatiently every morning. But they understood something we have forgotten. They understood that patience is not weakness. It is strength. It is the strength to trust the process, the strength to do things right rather than fast, the strength to wait for the right moment rather than act out of anxiety or impatience. As you drift into sleep tonight, let go of urgency. Let go of impatience. Let go of the need for everything to happen right now. Trust that what needs to happen will happen. In its time, in its season. Your job is not to force it. Your job is to prepare, to tend, to be ready when the moment comes. Like the farmer tending his vines, like the architect perfecting each stone, like the fisherman reading the water. Do your work, do it well, and trust the timing. The acorn does not worry about becoming an oak. It simply grows day by day, year by year, following its nature. And one day, without forcing, without rushing, it stands tall and strong. You are like that acorn, growing, becoming, in your own time. In your own way, trust the process. Trust the timing. Trust that you are exactly where you need to be. Sleep now, my friend. Sleep deeply, and know that time is not your enemy. Time is the soil in which all good things grow. Time is the space in which transformation happens. Time is your ally, not your adversary. Rest in patience. Rest in trust. Rest in the knowledge that everything unfolds as it should. When it should, if we give it the time it needs. Good night, and may patience find you. May you wake tomorrow with renewed trust in the process. May you remember that the best things in life cannot be rushed. Sleep well, dream peacefully, and let time do its gentle, powerful work. That's all for tonight, my friend. Now the music ahead will take you to sleep, if you haven't slept yet.